At 19, I thought the worst part of my first job was just folding discount shirts. Turns out, the worst part was my stepmother's slap in the stockroom, and the fact it was all caught on camera. Weeks later, an anonymous email hit HR's inbox at 2:14 a.m. When they called me in to review the tape, it wasn't just a family secret, it was a corporate crime scene. My name is Nora Caldwell. I am 24 years old, and I am sitting in a room that smells like industrial carpet cleaner and stale air. The chair is molded plastic, the kind designed to be stacked, not sat in. It digs into the back of my thighs. The room is small, windowless, and painted a shade of institutional beige that seems engineered to absorb sound, to make secrets feel heavier. Above my head, a fluorescent light panel buzzes, a high, insistent whine that scrapes against the inside of my skull. It is the only sound in the room. My hands are on the laminate table. I am clasping them so tightly my knuckles have gone white, the pale half-moons of my fingernails biting deep into my palms. Across from me sit Mara Larkin, the Director of Human Resources for Brightline Grocers, and Eli Torres, the Regional Manager. Their plastic ID badges are clipped to their identical, corporate blue blazers, catching the harsh light with every small movement. Mara is all sharp angles and forced calm, her voice a smooth, practiced instrument of neutrality. Eli is softer around the edges, but his eyes are heavy, analytical. He is the one who does the math. She is the one who delivers the verdict. They have not touched the sweating pitcher of water or the inverted plastic cups arranged in the center of the table. Neither have I. My throat feels like it is coated in dust. Mara shuffles a single thin file folder. "Nora," she begins, and I fight the biological urge to flinch at the sound of my own name. "Thank you for coming in on such short notice. We're here to discuss a matter that has been brought to the company's attention, a serious matter." Eli leans forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "We need to talk about your initial employment period with Brightline. Our records show you started at the Pine Ridge location, number 312. Is that correct?" Pine Ridge. The name drops into the silence of the room like a stone thrown into a deep, dark well. It is a place I have actively, meticulously scrubbed from my resume, a town I left in my rearview mirror 4 years ago with no intention of ever looking back. "Yes," I manage. My voice sounds rusty, distant. "That's correct. I worked there when I was 19. 4 years ago," Mara says, stating it as a fact, not a question. She looks at Eli, a quick, imperceptible nod, then back to me. "We need to review an incident from that time." My stomach does a slow, cold roll. An incident. In the 4 years since I walked out of that store, my life has been a careful, desperate, upward climb away from everything Pine Ridge represented. I am a junior UX designer now. I live in a clean apartment in Denver. I pay my own rent. I am safe. I am insulated. But the way Mara Larkin says an incident tells me the past is not done with me. The insulation is about to be ripped away. I'm not sure what incident you mean." I lie, and the lie tastes bitter and pointless on my tongue. Mara doesn't challenge my flimsy denial. She simply places her hand on the lid of a company-issued laptop sitting closed between them. "We received a piece of footage. I need you to watch it and confirm the identities of the people involved." My heart, which had been a dull thud, gives one sharp, painful kick against my ribs. Footage. She turns the laptop to face me. The screen is dark for a half-second before she clicks the trackpad. A video player application opens. The file name is not a name at all, just a jumble of alphanumeric code. TAM-04B, stock corridor, and a date from 4 years ago. She hits the play button. The quality is terrible. It is grainy, stark black and white, filmed from a high-angle dome camera that gives the scene a warped, fisheye perspective. The timestamp in the top right corner ticks forward. The location is instantly, sickeningly familiar. The back corridor of the Pine Ridge store, the concrete hallway that connected the loading dock to the stockroom. Metal shelves line one wall. stacked high with overstock boxes of cereal and canned goods. Then I see her. Me. It is me at 19, a girl I barely recognize anymore, a girl who looks impossibly young and exhausted. I am swimming in a cheap, faded red bright-line polo shirt, my name tag hanging crooked, my hair pulled back in a messy, careless ponytail. I look thin, and my shoulders are slumped in a way that speaks of more than just a long shift. I am standing near the gray metal box of the time clock. And then the other figure enters the frame from the left. Valerie Caldwell, my stepmother. She is also in the red polo, but hers is crisp, pressed. She wears the royal blue vest of a shift supervisor, her own name tag perfectly aligned over her heart. Her hair is pulled back in the same severe tight bun I saw every morning at the breakfast table, the one that seemed to pull the skin taut around her eyes. On the screen, in ghostly black and white, Valerie is jabbing her finger into my 19-year-old self's chest. The video has no sound, but I do not need it. I remember every syllable. I remember the smell of her sour coffee breath and the faint, chemical scent of her hairspray. I watch myself flinch, try to step back. Valerie steps forward, crowding me, her face contorted in a mask of managerial rage that I knew, even then, was just plain rage. I see her mouth moving, the silent words forming: useless, ungrateful, stupid. Mara and Eli are watching the screen, their faces locked in professional neutrality. I am watching my own history unspool, a horror film I am being forced to see again. On the screen, Valerie shoves me. It is not a nudge. It is a full-bodied, two-handed shove to my shoulders. My 19-year-old self stumbles backward, completely unprepared. I hit the metal shelving unit hard. The entire rack shudders violently. A shrink-wrapped case of chicken noodle soup teeters on the edge of the second shelf and then crashes to the concrete floor, cans scattering like marbles, rolling out of frame. I see myself clutch my shoulder where I hit the metal bar. I see my mouth open, probably saying stop, or please, or I'm sorry, because I'm sorry was the default, the password for survival. And then I see Valerie's hand come up. It happens so fast, just as it did in real life, a blur of motion. She slaps me across the face, hard. My head snaps to the side from the force of it. I see myself stagger, one hand flying to my cheek, the bright, burning shock of it radiating through my jaw and rattling my teeth. I stumble again, catching myself on the very shelf she threw me against. Even in the grainy, soundless footage, the violence is stark. It is ugly. It is raw. It is undeniable. Mara's hand darts out and taps the trackpad. The video freezes on a horrific tableau. Me, clutching my face, cowering against the shelf, and Valerie, her hand still raised mid-swing, her mouth open in a silent yell. The high-pitched whine of the fluorescent light seems to roar into the vacuum of the room. "Nora," Mara says, her voice quiet but penetrating, slicing through the silence. "Is this you in the video?" I cannot speak. I cannot tear my eyes away from the screen. I can only nod, a tiny, jerky movement. "And the other individual," Eli Torres says, his voice low. "The supervisor, we have her listed in the file as Valerie Caldwell. Is that correct?" Another nod. "And Valerie Caldwell," Mara asks, her eyes narrowing, "is your stepmother?" "Yes," I whisper. The word scrapes my throat, raw and painful. They have no idea. They see a supervisor assaulting an employee. I see the final scene of a quiet war I had been losing for years. My mind is gone, pulled back 4 years into that exact moment. I am standing in the corridor again. I can feel the stinging, radiating heat on my left cheek, a 5-fingered brand that throbs in time with my pulse. I can taste the metallic tang of fear and adrenaline in my mouth. I remember my eyes, blurred with sudden tears, flickering up, past Valerie's furious face, to the little black dome camera mounted on the ceiling beam. I remember thinking, it's seeing this. And then I remember the next thought, the cold, heavy realization that crushed the spark of hope. It doesn't matter. No one is watching. And even if they are, she's the boss. She's your father's wife. You are just the stepkid. You need this job. I needed that paycheck, the pathetic minimum wage that she took half of anyway, claiming it was for household expenses. I needed it to save, to escape, to survive. So I pretended the camera wasn't there. I pretended it was just another part of the ceiling. I dropped my hand, took the rest of her screaming, and went back to work. Nora? Mara's voice pulls me back to the beige room, back to my 24-year-old body. I blink, forcing the memory down, forcing the stinging to recede. Yes, I say, my voice firmer. That's my stepmother. Mara and Eli exchange another loaded look, one I cannot decipher. This footage, Mara says, gesturing to the laptop, was sent to the general HR inbox 2 days ago at 2:14 in the morning. She flips the laptop back toward herself, clicks the trackpad a few times, and turns it back to me. The video is gone, replaced by a screenshot of an email. It is from a disposable, encrypted email address, a garbled string of letters and numbers. The subject line is 6 stark words. Subject: You need to see this before you get sued. The email contained this video file, and several others, Eli adds, his voice low and serious, as well as a list of dates and times referencing other incidents. My blood runs cold. Several others. My God. This wasn't the only time, was it? Nora, Mara states, it is not a question. We believe this footage indicates a potential pattern of behavior, that Valerie Caldwell may have engaged in physical contact with other employees as well. I remain silent. I think of Lena Ortiz, the older cashier, wincing when Valerie would grip her arm too hard to get her attention. I think of Miguel, the young stock boy, who Valerie once backed into the dairy cooler, screaming at him over a dropped case of milk until he was visibly shaking. Nora, Mara leans forward, dropping the practiced neutrality for a moment. Her eyes are sharp, analytical. This happened 4 years ago. This is a clear-cut, zero-tolerance violation of workplace violence policy. Why was this never reported? The question hangs in the air, heavy and thick with accusation. Why didn't you tell? Why did you let this happen? The old reflex rises up, the one that was beaten into me, verbally and, as they now knew, physically. Because she's family, because you don't air dirty laundry, because she's your father's wife, because she controls the money, because she'll make your life hell, because she'll turn your father against you, because she'll get you fired, because she'll ruin you. I look at Mara Larkin's crisp blazer and Eli Torres's concerned but corporate expression. They don't live in that world. They live in a world of policies and procedures, of anonymous hotlines and non-retaliation clauses. They wouldn't understand the complex, suffocating trap of being 19, broke, and managed both at work and at home by the same tyrant. I swallow the old excuses. They taste like ash. I look Mara dead in the eye. I didn't report it, I say, and my voice is surprisingly steady, cold even, because I didn't think anyone would believe me. Mara frowns. Why would you think that? A physical assault? Because she was Valerie Caldwell, I interrupt, the words finally coming, a floodgate breaking. She was the 10-year veteran supervisor. She was the one who kept the store in line. She was friends with the store manager, and she was your boss's wife, I say, nodding at Eli. And I was just me, the 19-year-old part-timer, the stepkid, her stepkid. Who do you think they would have believed? The one writing the schedules? Or the one begging for hours? The truth lands on the table, and for the first time, the chill in the room isn't just from the air conditioning, it's from them. I can see the calculation in their eyes. They are realizing the scope of the liability she represented, the lawsuit they had just narrowly avoided, threatened in an anonymous email at 2:14 in the morning. Eli Torres lets out a slow, quiet breath, nodding to himself as if confirming a private suspicion. He reaches over and closes the laptop lid with a soft, final click. The screen goes black. but the image of that slap is burned into the backs of my eyelids. "Nora," he says, his voice much gentler now, all pretense of a formal interview gone. "We believe you, and I'm going to be frank. This footage it's deeply disturbing. Mara and I are here to understand the full context. What Valerie did in that video is grounds for immediate termination and potentially criminal charges," Mara says, her voice flat and cold as steel. "But this email suggests, and what you're implying confirms, that the incident on the tape was not the beginning or the end." She gestures around the small, suffocating room. "We need you to tell us everything that was happening in your life when this footage was filmed. We need to understand the environment at the Pine Ridge store and in your home. That led to this. We need the full picture for our investigation. For the lawsuit they're trying to prevent, I think, but it doesn't matter. For the first time, someone is asking, someone with power." Eli nods. "Start at the beginning, Nora, whatever you feel the beginning is." The beginning, my God. The beginning wasn't the slap. The beginning wasn't even the job. I take a deep breath, the first one that feels like it's reached the bottom of my lungs since I walked into this building. I look down at my white-knuckled hands, still clasped on the table. I can still feel the phantom sting on my cheek, a memory 4 years old. I picture the frozen frame on the laptop screen, a moment of humiliation I thought was buried forever. I finally look up, meeting their gaze, one by one. "It all started the year my father married her," I say, "and the year I got my first job. The beginning was 6 years ago. I was 18, standing in our patchy backyard in Pine Ridge, Colorado, trying to make my smile look real. The whole town smelled like pine sap and the deep fryer oil from the diner on Main Street. And that day, it also smelled like cheap white wine and my father's anxiety. It was his wedding day, his marriage to Valerie. I held a plastic flute of lukewarm, sparkling cider, watching my father, Mark, try to fix Valerie's veil. Valerie was efficient. That was the word everyone used. She was the woman from our church who always organized the bake sales, the one who kept everything in order. Her hair was a neat, ash-blonde helmet, and her smile was bright, constant, and never quite reached her eyes. She was tidy, and, as my father's friends kept saying in impressed whispers, "You know, she knows the people at corporate over at Brightline." She was a regional supervisor for the grocery store chain that employed half the county. My father, Mark, just looked relieved. He had been laid off from the lumber mill 6 months prior, and in that time, he had seemed to shrink. Valerie, with her steady job and her organized life, had attached herself to him, and he had latched on like a man drowning. He kept telling me, "Valerie, she just understands how the world works. Nora, she's helping me get my feet back under me. She'll bring some discipline to this house." I just nodded. Discipline. What I heard was control. My own plans had evaporated just 3 months earlier. I had the acceptance letter from the University of Colorado, Denver, tacked to the corkboard in my room, a flapping, useless piece of paper. My mother's long, slow illness had scraped every last dollar out of our savings, and then our credit, before she passed. The college fund was gone. The dream of a dorm room and a new life in the city was gone. I was 18, stuck in Pine Ridge, and my father was marrying a woman I instinctively distrusted. At the small reception, Valerie found me by the wilting fruit salad. She put a cool, dry hand on my arm. "Nora, honey," she said, her voice like smooth, flat glass. "Your father and I were talking about your future." I tensed. My future? This college idea. It's just not practical right now, is it? We need to be realistic. She smiled that bright, empty smile. We need to get this family back on its feet. College can wait. What you need right now is a job, to contribute. Before I could answer, she delivered the hook. I was talking to Eli Torres, the regional manager at Brightline. I told him all about you. I told him my new stepdaughter was a hard worker, responsible. He said he'd be happy to have you at the Pine Ridge store. My stomach tightened. At the grocery store? As a cashier? It's a good, steady job, Nora. Good benefits, and I'll be right there to look out for you. She squeezed my arm, a gesture that was meant to be reassuring but felt proprietary. This will be our little thing. Nora, just you and me. You help us get the bills in order, and we'll see about school. Later. Later was a word I was beginning to learn meant never. My first day of work was a new kind of humiliation. The standard issue red polo shirt was itchy polyester, a men's large that was wide enough for two of me, making me feel shapeless and small. My name tag just said Nora C. Valerie wasn't my direct store manager, but as the regional supervisor who graced this branch with her presence, she was effectively the final word, and she made it her personal mission to oversee my training. She didn't train me. She hovered. No, she'd snap, right in front of a customer buying milk. Not like that. You're too slow. Scan with your left hand, bag with your right. It's about efficiency. Nora, keep the line moving. The customer, a woman from our church, gave me a pitying look, which was almost worse. I felt my face burn red, all the way to my ears. You have to weigh the produce before you type in the code, she'd say loudly, sighing as if I were the stupidest person on earth. It's not rocket science. I'd go home at night, my feet aching and my brain buzzing from the constant beep, beep, beep of the scanner, and the humiliation would follow me. The trap closed completely about 2 weeks later. On my first payday, I was sitting at the kitchen table, looking at my first real paycheck. It wasn't much, just over minimum wage, but it was mine. I was already calculating how much I could save, how long it would take to get a security deposit on an apartment in Denver. Valerie sat down across from me, a cup of tea in one hand and something else in the other. It was a cheap, spiral-bound notebook from the drugstore, the kind with a flimsy blue cover. Now that you're earning, she said, sliding the notebook onto the table, we need to talk about your contribution. Contribution? Of course. Her tone was light, as if this were the most obvious thing in the world. I got you the job. Nora, your father is still only working part-time at the hardware store. We have a mortgage. We have bills. You're an adult living under this roof. You need to pull your weight. She opened the notebook. On the first page, in her neat, sharp handwriting, she had written, household contributions. Underneath, she'd drawn columns for date, amount, and paid. I think 50% of your take-home pay is very reasonable, she said. For room and board? 50%? I looked at my check. That was almost everything. Valerie, I was trying to save. Save for what? She said, her voice losing its airy quality, becoming flat and hard. Save to leave? We are a family, Nora. Families help each other. Or did you expect a free ride? I looked at my father. He was standing at the sink, studying his placemat as if it held the secrets to the universe. Mark? He cleared his throat, not turning around. It's just temporary. Nora, you know, just until we're all stable. She's right. We all have to chip in. I looked back at Valerie. Her smile was back, fixed in place. She tapped the notebook. Cash is fine. Just bring it to me every payday, and I'll mark it down here. So we're all organized. So, every 2 weeks. My first act as an employed adult was to cash my paycheck, walk home, count out half the money, and slide the cash envelope across the kitchen table to my stepmother. I'd watch her mark it in her little blue book, a neat check mark. My own savings account balance stayed stubbornly at $14.28. She'd complain about the price of gas, about the electric bill, about how tight things were. Then she'd show up with a new set of expensive patio furniture, or a new stainless steel blender, or new clothes for her son, Blake. Blake was the counterpoint to my existence. He was her son from her first marriage, a few years older than me, away at a state university. He was the golden child. Blake understands sacrifice, she would announce at dinner. Usually after I'd asked if I could cut back my hours 1 week for a community college exam. Blake never complains. He's so focused on his future. Blake, from what I could tell, spent his time playing video games and rarely worked. His tuition and apartment paid for by some fund I wasn't supposed to ask about. I was the one working 40-hour weeks, the one lacking focus. I was the designated failure, the workhorse. She made sure I knew it. The joke started about a month in. I'd be rushing from my community college class, clocking in at 2 minutes past the hour. Valerie would be standing there by the time clock, arms crossed. "Careful, Nora," she'd say, loud enough for the other cashiers to hear. "Show up late again and I might have to cut your hours. We can't have unreliable people on the front end." One time, I had covered a double shift for Lena Ortiz, one of the older cashiers, who had a sick grandchild. I was exhausted, leaning against the counter for just a second. Valerie materialized. "Tired, Nora? Maybe this job is just too much for you. Lots of people are looking for work. You know, people who appreciate the opportunity." The joke never sounded like a joke. It always sounded like a threat. I told myself it was fine. I was helping my dad. I was paying my dues. I was learning what real work was. But mostly, I was terrified. I was terrified of being the ungrateful, lazy stepdaughter she was already painting me as to my father's side of the family. I was terrified of being unemployed, with no money, stuck in that house with her 24/7. So I kept my head down. I scanned the groceries. I bagged the milk. I handed over the cash. I let her chip away at me. Correction by correction, insult by insult. I survived. I remember one night, about 6 months into the job, I was closing. It was just me and her. I'd finished cleaning my register, and I was waiting by the time clock to punch out. She came out of the office, zipping her purse. She stopped and looked at me, a long, appraising stare, as if I were a piece of produce she was deciding whether to buy or throw out. "You are lucky. You know that," she said, her voice quiet in the empty, echoing store. "What?" "You're lucky your stepmom is your boss." She took a step closer. "You're slow. You're sullen. You make mistakes. Anyone else would have fired you by now. You should remember who signs your paychecks and who keeps you employed." I stared at her, the hum of the fluorescent light suddenly roaring in my ears. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't playing the part of the concerned mother or the efficient supervisor. This was just her. She wasn't joking. She wasn't teaching me a life lesson. It was a warning. It was a reminder of who had the power, and at the time, I didn't understand just how far she was willing to go to use it. It was a promise. My life settled into a rhythm, a brutal, grinding pattern that became the soundtrack to my 19th year. The beep, beep, beep of the scanner was the percussion. The rumble of shopping cart wheels was the bass line, and the smell of bruised bananas and floor wax was the air I breathed. I was a ghost oscillating between two fluorescent-lit boxes, the community college classroom where I was failing Intro to Psychology, and Lane 4 at the Brightline Grocers in Pine Ridge. Valerie, in her royal blue supervisor's vest, was the conductor of this miserable orchestra. Her power in that store was absolute, at least on the front end. She made the schedule. She assigned the breaks. She held the clipboard with the disciplinary write-ups. Her clipboard was her scepter. She ruled her little checkout kingdom with petty, absolute tyranny. She rewarded the sycophants, the cashiers who complimented her hair or brought her coffee, with the coveted midday shifts and first pick of holidays. She punished anyone who crossed her, or anyone she simply didn't like, with a quiet, systematic cruelty. And she really did not like me. My schedule was a masterpiece of passive aggression. I had a biology lab on Tuesday and Thursday nights that ended at 5:30 p.m. Without fail, Valerie would schedule me for a 5 p.m. shift on those days. When I pointed out the conflict, she would sigh, a long-suffering sound, and say, "Nora, the store has needs. You have to decide what's more important, your little class, or the job that's keeping a roof over your father's head." When my midterm grades came back, a disastrous mix of C-minuses and D-pluses, she held them at the dinner table as if they were evidence in a trial. "I'm just so disappointed. Mark," she'd say to my father, her voice dripping with concern. I'm giving her all these opportunities, and she's just unfocused. She's not serious about her future. My father, gray with exhaustion from his own job hauling boxes at the hardware store's warehouse, would just rub his temples. Nora, you gotta try harder. We're all counting on you. I was trying so hard I felt like my skin was stretched too thin, ready to tear. The real exploitation, the real theft, happened in the margins. It started small. Nora, honey, she'd say, catching me as I was about to clock in. Can you come in just 10 minutes early tomorrow? The morning shipment of soda is coming in, and I need someone to build the display before we open. 10 minutes became 20. 20 minutes became half an hour. Then it was staying late. I know you're clocked out, Nora, but the back stockroom is a disaster. Just give me 15 minutes of your time to get these carts sorted. It's for the good of the team, your family, you understand. She always framed it as a favor, as a family obligation. Just help your old stepmom out, she'd say with a wink. Your dad and I are still struggling. You know, every bit helps. But those bits, those 15 minutes here, 30 minutes there, never appeared on my pay stub. I worked a 40-hour week, but I was at the store for 48, sometimes 50 hours. When I finally got the courage to point it out, holding my pay stub with its conspicuously round number of hours, she just waved her hand dismissively. Oh, that? It's a glitch in the new system, she said, not even looking up from her scheduling sheet. It never registers anything less than an hour. Don't make a fuss, Nora. It makes you look petty. I'll take care of it. She never took care of it. One afternoon, I was refilling the plastic grocery bags at my register. Lena Ortiz, a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and a deep, weary voice, was at the next register over. Valerie was in the office. Mija, Lena said, her voice barely a whisper. I looked over. You shouldn't be doing that. Doing what? Refilling the bags? No, she said, her eyes flicking toward the office, then back to me. Working when you're not clocked in. That extra half hour you stayed last night to clean the break room. Valerie just asked me to... I know what she asked. Lena stopped scanning and looked right at me. That's illegal. Nora, what she's doing is called wage theft. She's stealing from you. I just stared at her. The word stealing sounded so harsh, so final. Lena nodded toward the ceiling. She thinks no one sees, but that little camera, she pointed to the black dome mounted right above the time clock. It sees everything. It sees when you come in. It sees when you punch the clock. And it sees when you leave. She lowered her voice again. Be careful. Mija, she is not your friend. The warning settled in my gut like a cold stone. But what could I do? Lena didn't live in my house. Valerie's public performances were the worst. She was a master of the split-second transformation. She could be hissing at me for scanning a coupon code incorrectly. Her face pinched and ugly. Her voice a low, venomous stream. How many times do I have to tell you? The digital coupon first, then the paper. Are you stupid? Do you want to get me in trouble for a drawer shortage? And then, if Eli Torres, the regional manager, suddenly rounded the corner, her face would instantly snap into a mask of beaming maternal pride. Oh, Eli, she'd trill, putting a loving hand on my shoulder. I was just telling Nora how proud I am of her. She's picking this up so fast. She's a natural, just like I told you. I would just stand there, my skin crawling where her hand rested. The echo of, "Are you stupid?" still ringing in my ears. I'd watch Eli smile, nod, and tell Valerie she was a miracle worker, and I would feel completely, utterly insane. At home, the job was her primary weapon, the leverage for every financial extraction. She held my employment over my head like a guillotine. The 50% household contribution was no longer enough. She needed more, for the car insurance, for the water bill, for a new set of tires on her car. One night, I hesitated. I clutched the cash from my paycheck, my savings goal seeming to drift further away, into an impossible future. Valerie, I I barely have $20 left for myself, for gas, for my books. Her smile vanished. The mask was off. She sat back in her chair, her eyes cold. That's a shame, she said. It really is. She picked at a fingernail. You know, I was just talking to Eli Torres today. He was asking me how you were fitting in. I told him you were struggling a little, that maybe you weren't bright line material. He trusts my judgment. Nora, explicitly. She let the threat hang in the air. I just have to make one phone call, she continued, her voice soft and deadly. I just have to tell Eli you're not a good fit, that you have a bad attitude. Then you'd have no job at all. And then what would you do? How would you survive then? My hand unclenched. I pushed the extra $40 she demanded across the table. My father was a ghost in this narrative. He'd come home from the warehouse, covered in dust, and slump into his recliner. He'd turn on the TV, and the noise would just wash over him. He was trying to keep his own head above water. Valerie became his gatekeeper, the manager of his emotions. Mark is just so stressed, she'd tell me in a stage whisper. The last thing he needs is you causing trouble or complaining about your hours. We are teaching you discipline. Nora, we are teaching you what it means to be an adult. You should be grateful. And so my father's silence became his complicity. He outsourced the discipline to her, and she wielded it with vicious delight. I began to feel like I didn't have a home and a job. I had one job, one boss, one continuous, 24-hour shift that I never clocked out of. I was on the clock when I was scanning groceries, and I was on the clock when I was washing the dinner dishes under her watchful eye. There was no escape, no privacy, no safe space. The final crack in my denial came on a late Tuesday night. I'd just finished my closing shift. My father was already asleep. I was walking down the hall to my room when I heard Valerie's voice from her home office. The door cracked open. She was on the phone, her voice light and giddy. "Oh, it's perfect," she was saying, and she laughed, a high, tinkling sound that made my blood freeze. "No, Blake is fine. He's just focused on school. But Mark's kid, she's another story. She's working for me at the store now." I stopped, pressing myself flat against the hallway wall. "Honestly, it's like having a second, private bank account," Valerie said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "She works like a dog. I take half her paycheck for the house, and she's so scared of being fired she's giving me 20, 30 hours of free labor a month off the books. She clocks out, and I just find something for her to clean. It's amazing. Free labor. Who knew stepdaughters were so profitable?" She laughed again. "Profitable. Free labor." I backed away, silent, and got into my room, locking the door, which I never did. I sat on my bed for a long time in the dark. The words just played over and over in my head. Free labor, profitable, a second, private bank account. That night, after she went to bed, I drove my beat-up car to the 24-hour diner and sat in the parking lot. I pulled out my last pay stub, the numbers blurred under the dim orange security light. I looked at the net pay, a laughably small number. I thought about the cash I'd handed her. I thought about the hours I'd worked that were not on this piece of paper. "This is not normal," I whispered to the steering wheel. "This can't be normal." The thought finally formed, clear and sharp. I have to report her. I have to tell someone. I have to tell HR. And just as quickly, the counter-argument, her voice in my own head, crushed it. "Who would you tell? Eli Torres? He's her friend. He'll just tell her, and she'll fire you, and she'll tell your dad you're a liar, that you're trying to break up their marriage. They will believe her. She's the 10-year veteran. You're just the lazy, ungrateful stepkid." I put my head down on the steering wheel. Defeated, I was trapped. I had no money, no power, and no one to tell. So I swallowed the thought, shoved it down deep with all the other insults and injustices, and went back to work the next day. After I overheard her profitable stepdaughter comment, something inside me didn't just break. It calcified. My fear turned into a quiet, cold, observant rage. But Valerie seemed to sense this shift, this tiny hardening of my spine, and she escalated her tactics from simple exploitation to a campaign of psychological warfare. It became a game of madness. "Why are you here, Nora?" she'd ask, feigning confusion as I walked in for my 4 p.m. shift. "You were on the schedule for noon. You've missed half your shift." "No," I'd say, my voice trembling as I held out my phone, showing her the digital schedule she herself had posted. "It says 4 p.m., right here." She would wave her hand, a puff of dismissive air. "Oh, the system must not have updated. I had to change it this morning. You really need to be more proactive, Nora, and check in with me. I can't be expected to hold your hand." She would mark me as a no call, no show for the hours from noon to 4. A black mark on my record. It didn't matter what the app said. Her word was the only reality. The gaslighting reached its masterpiece a few weeks later. She had scheduled me for 7 consecutive closing shifts, a brutal, soul-crushing marathon of beep, beep, beep that left me barely able to form a sentence. My psychology professor had pulled me aside and warned me I was in danger of failing the class. On the 7th day, I found her in the cash office, counting drawers. I was shaking with exhaustion. "Valerie, I can't," I whispered, clutching the doorframe. "You have me on for 7 days straight. It's against policy. I need a day off." She looked up from her stacks of 20s, her face a perfect mask of managerial concern. "7 days? Nora, what are you talking about?" "This week, I haven't had a day off since last Tuesday." "That's impossible," she said. "You requested this schedule." "What? No, I didn't. I would never." "You absolutely did," she said, her voice sharp and certain. She turned to her file cabinet, pulled out a drawer, and plucked a piece of paper. It was a formal, time-off shift change request form. She slid it across the desk to me. "Here, you requested to consolidate your hours to get next weekend off. You signed it yourself." I looked down. There, on the bottom line, was my name, scrawled in a hasty, looping script that was a grotesque parody of my own handwriting. Nora Caldwell. It was a forgery, a clumsy one, but it was on an official form. "I didn't sign this," I said, my voice barely audible. Valerie's eyes went flat and cold. "Are you calling me a liar, Nora? Are you accusing your supervisor of forgery? Because that is a very serious accusation, one that I would have to report to Eli Torres immediately. And frankly, given your recent performance, I don't think he'd take your side." I stared at the paper, at the signature that wasn't mine, and felt the floor drop out from under me. I was living in a world where she could rewrite reality, and I had no one to appeal to. I worked the 7th shift. Then came the formal write-ups. They were for things so small, so petty, that they were undeniable. I was 1 minute late clocking in because my biology lab ran long. Disciplinary action report. Violation of time and attendance policy. I took too long on my 15-minute break. I had spent 7 of those minutes in the bathroom stall, silently crying, trying to pull myself together. Disciplinary action report. Failure to adhere to break schedules. A customer, angry that we were out of the ice cream brand he wanted, yelled at me. I apologized and offered him a different brand. He stormed off. 10 minutes later, Valerie was at my register with the clipboard. "Mrs. Gable in aisle 3 said you were short with her. We don't tolerate being short with our customers. Nora, that's a verbal warning. Disciplinary action report. Poor customer service." She brought them home. She weaponized them at the dinner table, making sure my father was there to see. She'd slide a carbon copy of the write-up, still smelling of the office printer, next to his plate of spaghetti. "I just don't know what to do. Mark," she'd sigh, rubbing her temples. "I had to write her up again today. For being rude to a customer. I'm protecting her as much as I can. I really am. I'm sticking my neck out for her with the store manager. But she's not trying. She's lucky they haven't just let her go. She should be so grateful I'm there to look out for her." My father would read the report, his face creasing with disappointment. "Nora," he'd say, not with anger, but with a deep, crushing weariness. "What's going on with you? You can't keep doing this. You're making Valerie's life harder." I would just stare at my plate, the food turning to glue in my mouth. I was being documented into the role of the problem child, the ungrateful, incompetent burden, and the architect of my failure was the one being praised for her patience. Lina Ortiz saw it all. She found me in the break room one afternoon, staring at the new schedule where, once again, my name was on every closing shift. She sat down across from me and pushed her cup of instant coffee toward me. "She's papering your file, mija," Lina said, her voice a low rumble. "What do you mean?" "The write-ups, the verbal warnings. This," she tapped the schedule. "She's building a case. It's the oldest manager's trick in the book. You get 3 write-ups. Doesn't matter how stupid. Then a final warning. Then you're out the door. Fired for cause. No unemployment. She's not protecting you. Nora. She's preparing to execute you." My blood went cold. Fired. "You need to fight back," Lina said. "But you can't fight her out here. You'll lose." She tapped her temple. "You fight her smart. Go to the drugstore. Buy one of those little spiral notebooks. The kind she uses." My stomach turned. "And you write everything down. Every time she makes you work off the clock. Write the date and the time. Every time she changes your schedule. Write it down. Every time she says something, you write it down. Keep it at home. Keep it hidden." That night, I bought the notebook, and I started to write. I also started to look up. I became obsessed with the cameras. I started mapping them. I'd stand in one spot and scan the ceiling, tracing their lines of sight. There was the big dome over the front entrance, 2 smaller ones covering the checkout lanes, one aimed directly at the cash office door, one in the break room, its fisheye lens making the whole room look warped and distorted, and the one Lina had pointed out, the one that watched us clock in and clock out. The store was no longer a store. It was a stage, a grid of visible and invisible spaces, and I realized, with a jolt, that Valerie knew the grid better than anyone. She started using it. She would be perfectly pleasant, even maternal, when she was standing with me by my register, directly under the gaze of camera 3. "Nora, honey, you're doing a great job. Keep it up," she'd say, loud enough for others to hear. Then she would motion for me to follow her. "Let's check the stock on aisle 9. She'd lead me to the dead end of the paper towel aisle, a narrow canyon of cardboard, notoriously out of sight of the main aisle cameras. The instant we were in the blind spot, her face would change, the smile would vanish, her eyes turning to chips of ice. "I saw you talking to Lina Ortiz for 5 minutes by the time clock," she would hiss, her voice a low vibration of venom. "What were you two whispering about? Me? Do you think you're clever? Do you think I'm stupid?" "We were just talking about the—" "Shut up," she'd snap. "You don't talk to her. You don't talk to anyone. You come here, you do your job, you go home, and you keep your mouth shut. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Valerie." And just as quickly, she would step back into the main visible concourse, the mask snapping back into place. "Great. Now, that aisle looks a little messy. Why don't you face the shelves before the evening rush?" I felt like I was losing my mind, caught between these 2 versions of her, one for the cameras and one for the blind spots. The first time she touched me, not the slap, but the prelude, was in a blind spot. It was by the giant, noisy cardboard baler in the back receiving bay. It was a loud, chaotic area, filled with pallets and empty boxes, and I was trying to crush a mountain of cardboard before my shift ended. She came up behind me. The roar of the compactor was deafening. "I saw you talking to Lina by the registers," she yelled over the machine. I was just asking her a question about a coupon," I yelled back. "Liar," she shrieked, and she moved so fast I didn't have time to react. She grabbed my right wrist, her fingers digging in with shocking strength. She wasn't just holding me, she was pinching. Her thumb ground into the delicate bones, and a bolt of white-hot pain shot up my arm. "Don't you ever talk about me," she screamed, her face inches from mine, her spittle hitting my cheek. "Don't you ever talk about this family. You breathe one word to HR, to anyone, and that's not just insubordination. That's betraying your father. That's betraying this family. I will end you. I cried out, a small, choked sound, trying to pull my arm back. Her grip was like a steel trap. Wincing, my eyes darted up, searching for help, for anything. I saw it. The small, black dome of a camera mounted on a steel beam near the loading dock. A tiny, pinprick red light was glowing on its side. It was on. It was watching. Valerie followed my gaze. A short, ugly bark of a laugh escaped her. "Oh, God, you're pathetic," she sneered, her voice full of contempt. She let go of my wrist, shoving it back at me. "You think anyone is watching that? You think anyone cares? Honey, those things only care about missing cash, or if some junkie tries to steal a television, they don't care about you." She turned and walked away, her supervisor vest disappearing around a pallet of dog food. I stood there, the baler's hydraulic thud matching the pounding in my head. I looked at my wrist. 4 angry, red, finger-shaped marks were already blooming, a perfect imprint of her rage. That night, they would blossom into a deep, ugly, purple and yellow bruise. A week later, there was a mandatory all-hands meeting in the break room. A man in a suit I didn't recognize, some corporate drone from Regional, stood by the coffee machine. "As part of Brightline's ongoing commitment to employee safety and asset protection," he said, reading from a laminated card, "we are pleased to announce a full upgrade to our surveillance system. We'll be installing new high-definition digital cameras, moving to a cloud-based storage system, and most importantly, expanding our coverage. We'll be adding new cameras to all back-of-house corridors, stockrooms, and receiving bays." My heart gave a single, painful thump. New cameras, cloud storage, back corridors. Valerie, who was standing in the back, raised her hand. Her voice was full of manufactured sincerity. "I just want to say, on behalf of the entire Pine Ridge team, thank you," she gushed. "We take our employees' safety so seriously here, and it's just wonderful to know that corporate is investing in protecting us all." The corporate drone beamed at her. I just stared, my stomach filling with acid. She wasn't scared. She was proud. The cameras weren't a threat to her. They were an extension of her power. Any tiny, flickering ember of hope I'd felt died right there in the break room. The cameras weren't there to protect me. They were there to protect the store's assets, and I was not an asset. The pressure at home ramped up. She and my father were buying a new car, a big, new SUV they couldn't afford. The brochures were left on the kitchen table every morning. "Mark and I are looking to upgrade," she announced one night at dinner. Then she turned her bright, predatory gaze on me. "You know, Nora, with your extra income, you're not really pulling your weight around here. You should be contributing to the car payment. It would benefit the whole family. After all, maybe I'd even let you borrow it sometimes." The girl who had been grabbed by the bailer, the girl with the forged signature in her file, the girl with the notebook hidden under her mattress, was gone. "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. My father froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Valerie's smile twitched. "What did you say?" I said no. "I'm already paying half my check for household contributions. I'm not paying for your new car." The explosion I expected never came. Instead, a wall of ice slammed down. She didn't look at me. She didn't speak to me. For 3 solid days, I was a ghost in my own home. She would talk about me, to my father, as if I wasn't even there. "Mark," she'd say, as I was sitting right across from them, "can you tell Nora that if she's going to be so selfish and ungrateful, she can start making her own dinners? I'm tired of providing for someone who gives nothing back." My father, caught in the crossfire, would just sigh, his face a mask of exhaustion and defeat. "Nora, just apologize. Can't you see how hard she's working for us?" That night, I lay in my bed, the house heavy and silent around me. I stared up at the ceiling, at the small, round, white plastic disc of the smoke detector. It was cheap plastic. It had a little blinking green light to show it was working. I stared at it until my eyes burned, and I wished, with a desperate, childish, impossible longing, that it was a camera. I wished it had a secret lens, a secret wire, and that somewhere, in a safe, warm room far away, someone was finally watching what was happening to me. It was the Saturday after Black Friday. Hell had descended upon the Brightline grocers of Pine Ridge. The store was a vortex of frantic, furious consumerism. The aisles were choked with abandoned shopping carts, spilled slushies, and shreds of tinfoil tinsel. Every customer was angry. Every employee was on the verge of tears. The lines for the registers snaked back past the dairy case, a miserable, shuffling procession of people who all seemed to be yelling into their phones. We had been running on a skeleton crew since dawn, and the air was thick with exhaustion and the smell of wet wool. I had begged Valerie to put me on stock, just to get me off the front lines. "Please," I'd said in the break room that morning. "I can just run go-backs. I can organize the pallets. Anything. Just not a register." She'd smiled that tight, reptilian smile. "Absolutely not. Your family. Nora, I need my best people where I can see them. You're on lane 4 until close." It was a punishment, not a compliment. She wanted me where the chaos was thickest, where she could watch me drown. My shift was a 9-hour blur of scanning and screaming. At around 3 p.m., in the middle of the worst crush, my register simply froze. The screen went blank. The scanner died. The man I was ringing up, who was trying to buy 3 giant, flat-screen televisions on a discount that had expired yesterday, began to roar. "This is unacceptable. It's a bait and switch. I want the price you advertised." "Sir, I'm so sorry. My system is down. I just need to—" "Get me your manager. Get me someone who knows what they're doing." Valerie swooped in, her face a thundercloud. She didn't look at me. She charmed the customer, rebooted the system with a managerial override code, and manually entered a price that made the man shut up. She got him checked out. Then, as he was walking away, she turned to me. The line was a dozen deep, everyone watching. Her voice was low, but it carried, "You just cost this company money. You just undermined this store's integrity. And you just embarrassed me. You are incompetent. Nora. Completely and utterly incompetent." My face felt like it was on fire. I just stood there, my hands shaking, and took it. "I'm sorry, Valerie." "Just scan," she hissed, and stalked off. At 10 p.m., the last customer finally left. The automatic doors slid shut. The store lights dimmed to half power, and the piped-in Christmas music finally, mercifully, clicked off. The silence was heavy, ringing in my ears. I had been on my feet for 10 straight hours. I felt hollowed out, my bones replaced with aching, wet sand. I trudged to the back corridor, to the time clock. I was the last cashier out. I slid my card, heard the satisfying ka-chunk of the machine, and pulled it out. Done. 10 hours. I was free. I was going to go home, fall into bed, and not exist for a while. Not so fast. Valerie's voice came from the cash office behind me. I turned. She was standing in the doorway, zipping her purse. "What?" "The promotional aisle. It's a pigsty. All the Black Friday overstock is still on the U-boats. It needs to be organized and shelved before the morning truck arrives." I stared at her. "Valerie, I'm clocked out. I just worked 10 hours. And?" Her voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. "It needs to be done. We're a team. We finished the job." I hesitated. This was it. The line, wage theft. Lena's voice was in my head. My own notebook was in my head. My hand, still holding my time card, tightened. I can't. I'm too tired, and I'm off the clock." Her eyes narrowed. She didn't move from the doorway. She just looked at me, a long, cold, appraising stare. "Adults," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Finish the job. Adults don't whine about being tired." She nodded at the time card in my hand. "You're clocked out. Good. Now go and handle the promo aisle, and then we can have a talk about your attitude." "No," I said. It was barely a whisper. "I'm not working for free anymore. Valerie." The air in the hallway crackled. It was the first time I had ever said the word no to her. She didn't yell. She just smiled. It was the scariest expression I had ever seen on her face. "All right," she said, shrugging. "Have it your way." She stepped out of the office and started walking down the concrete corridor toward the stockroom. "Walk with me," she commanded. I didn't move. "Now, Nora, or you can just keep walking right out the door and not come back. Your choice." Fired. The threat hung in the air. My feet, betraying me, started to move. I followed her, my shoes squeaking on the clean concrete. I felt sick. She led me down the long back hallway, the one that led to the loading dock. She stopped right by the bay doors, in the exact spot where the new, high-definition cameras had been installed, the ones she had praised for protecting us. She turned, and she had me blocked. The exit was behind me, but she was between me and the main floor. "You embarrassed me today, Nora," she started, her voice a low, controlled hiss. "In front of a customer, in front of my entire staff. You made me look weak." The register froze. It wasn't my "You are always making excuses," she spat. "You're lazy. You're tired. You're confused. I see you. I see you flirting with that bag boy, Miguel. I see you laughing with Lena. You think this is a social club? You think you're here to make friends? I'm just trying to do my job." "You are a terrible employee," she was yelling now, her voice bouncing off the cinder block walls. "You are slow, you are stupid, and you are a liability. And on top of it all, you're ungrateful." "I'm not ungrateful," the words burst out of me, fueled by 10 hours of abuse and months of simmering rage. "I'm not. I work every shift you give me. I give you half my paycheck. I'm not giving you any more money for expenses you won't even explain. I'm not working for free anymore. It's illegal. Valerie?" The word illegal hung in the air. I had done it. I had finally said it. Her face, which had been pinched with anger, went completely blank. The professional mask, the maternal mask, the angry supervisor mask, they all dissolved. What was left was something raw, something primal. It was pure, unfiltered hatred. "You," she whispered, taking a step toward me. "You have nothing. You are nothing." She grabbed the front of my polo shirt, twisting the fabric in her fist. "Everything you have is because of me," she screamed, her voice cracking. "I gave you this job. I put food in your mouth. I keep a roof over your ungrateful head." And she shoved me. It was not a nudge. It was a violent, two-handed assault. My head snapped back, and I stumbled, crashing hard against the heavy-duty metal shelving unit that lined the wall. My back and shoulder exploded in pain as I hit the steel bar. The entire rack shuddered, a display of canned soup, stacked high, rattled and clattered. I was dizzy, spots dancing in my eyes. The wind knocked out of me. I pushed myself off the shelf, my hands shaking. "The only thing I have," I gasped, the words tumbling out, tasting like blood, "is a minimum wage job and an empty bank account because you steal from me." I should not have said it. It was the one truth she could not bear. Her face contorted. Her hand came up. I saw it coming, but it was like I was underwater. I couldn't move. I couldn't duck. I just saw her hand, her rings, her rage. She slapped me across the face. The sound was shockingly loud in the concrete corridor, a single, sharp crack that echoed. The force of it snapped my head to the side. My right ear erupted in a high-pitched ringing. My jaw clacked together, and I tasted the sharp, metallic tang of biting my own tongue. A universe of bright, white pain exploded on my cheek. I staggered back again, my legs turning to water, and slammed into the shelving unit a second time, my head thudding hard against a metal upright. The cans of soup on the shelf above me, already unstable, finally gave way. A cascade of chicken noodle and cream of mushroom rained down, thud-thud clanging onto the concrete floor around my feet. I didn't even feel them. All I could feel was the throbbing, burning fire on my face. My eyes were watering, the tears involuntary, a response to the pure, physical shock of the impact. I was stunned. I was completely, utterly stunned. In that moment of deafening, ringing silence, my vision blurred and then focused on one thing. I was still leaning against the shelf, my hand coming up to cup my burning cheek, and my eyes, almost of their own accord, lifted up to the ceiling, and I saw it. The new camera, the high-definition safety upgrade, a sleek, black dome, not 10 feet away. It was mounted on a beam, aimed directly at this exact spot. It was pointed right at us. I was staring at it. I was staring at the small, black, unblinking lens that had just seen everything. What's going on? A new voice, from the end of the hall. Valerie, who had been frozen, her hands still raised slightly, her chest heaving, spun around. It was Miguel, the bag boy. He was standing 20 feet away, holding a push broom, his eyes wide as saucers. He had seen it. He had seen the end of it. He had seen her hand. He had seen me clutching my face. Valerie's transformation was instantaneous. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever witnessed. The demonic rage vanished, sucked back inside her, as if it had never existed. The efficient, no-nonsense supervisor was back in its place. "Miguel!" she barked, and her voice was crisp, clear, and perfectly normal. "What are you doing? You're supposed to be sweeping the front end." I heard a crash," he stammered, his eyes darting from me to the cans on the floor, and back to my face. "Nora knocked over a display," Valerie said, her voice breezy, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. She turned to me, her eyes dead and cold, but a small, tight smile fixed on her lips. "She's so clumsy tonight, just exhausted from the long shift. Aren't you, honey?" I couldn't speak. I was trembling so hard I thought my knees would buckle. "Get back to the front," she ordered Miguel. "I'll handle this." He hesitated, his gaze still fixed on me. "Are you okay, Nora?" "She's fine," Valerie snapped. "Go." Miguel, a 17-year-old kid, was no match for her. He ducked his head, his face pale, and vanished back toward the main store. Valerie turned back to me. The smile was gone. Her face was blank. She looked at the cans on the floor. She looked at me, trembling, my hand still pressed to my stinging cheek. "Clean this up," she said, her voice flat, "and then finish the promo aisle. I'm going home." She turned, her shoes clicking on the concrete, and walked away. She didn't look back. I stood there for a long time, in the silence, surrounded by cans of soup. My cheek was on fire. My head was throbbing where it hit the metal. I was shaking from head to toe. A deep, uncontrollable, adrenalized tremor. Slowly, my legs shaking, I knelt. I started picking up the cans. I put them back on the shelf, my hands clumsy and slick with sweat. Then, like a robot, like a puppet, I went to the promo aisle, and for another hour, I worked. I organized the boxes of crackers and the displays of soda. I worked for free. I drove home, the ringing in my ear finally subsiding, replaced by a dull, deep ache in my jaw. When I walked in, my father was asleep in his recliner, the TV muttering. I went into the bathroom. I turned on the light. I looked in the mirror. It was already there, a faint, angry red mark, spreading from just under my cheekbone, down toward my jaw. The perfect, five-fingered shadow of her hand. By morning, it would be a spectacular, undeniable bruise. I went to my room, got into bed, and pulled the covers up to my chin. I stared at the smoke detector on the ceiling. I replayed the moment, the crack of the slap, the rattling cans, and the camera, the little black eye in the ceiling. Then I heard her voice, her words from that day by the baler. "They don't care about you, And her words from tonight: "No one will believe you. I'm the boss. You're just a hysterical kid." And the worst part, the part that made the hot tears finally start to roll, slow and silent, down my face and onto my pillow. I believed her. I absolutely, 100% believed her. The weeks after the slap were a gray, muffled fog. I moved through the world as if I were submerged in cold, viscous water. The ringing in my right ear eventually faded, but it was replaced by a dull, constant ache in my jaw and a protective silence. The bruise was spectacular. It bloomed over the next 2 days. A grotesque, astrological map of purple, green, and yellow. A perfect handprint branded on my skin. I became an expert in high-coverage concealer, spackling over the injury with a thick, beige paste that cracked by the end of my shifts. I wore my hair down, a curtain falling over the right side of my face, and I learned to turn my head so people would only see my good side. At work, I was a ghost. I was a pair of hands scanning items. I was a voice saying, "Have a nice day." I flinched, a full body, electric jolt. Every time the bell on the front door chimed, my heart would slam against my ribs, a painful, panicked bird. Every time I saw Valerie's royal blue vest rounding the end of an aisle, I stopped going to the break room. I took my breaks in my car. I avoided Lena's sympathetic, questioning eyes. I avoided Miguel, who looked at me with a mixture of pity and fear, as if I were contagious. Lena finally cornered me by the lockers as I was clocking out. "Mija," she whispered, her voice low and fierce, her kind eyes now hard as flint. "You have to report this. This isn't just meanness. That was assault. You go to the police. You call the corporate hotline." I just shook my head, my throat closing up. I couldn't form the words. Who would believe me? "He saw it," she pressed, gesturing toward the front end where Miguel was bagging. "The kid saw it. I saw your face. I saw the tapes from the front when you came back out. You were hiding it." I just kept shaking my head, my eyes burning. "Fine," she hissed, her frustration palpable. "Fine, but at least you took a picture of that, right? For yourself, as proof." I hadn't. That night, I did. I stood in the harsh, yellow light of my bathroom, long after my father and Valerie were asleep. I held up my phone. My hand was shaking so badly the first few shots were blurry. I took a deep breath, steadied my arm, and took one, clear, brutal selfie. I looked at the girl in the picture. Her eye was swollen. The bruise was dark and stark against her pale skin. She looked terrified. And she looked 13, not 19. I looked at the picture, and then I buried it, moving it into a hidden folder on my phone, a digital secret, a piece of evidence I was too terrified to ever use. Valerie, at home, was worse. She had won. She knew I had seen the camera. She knew Miguel had seen her, and she knew, with every passing, silent day, that I had done nothing. I had not reported her. I had not told my father. I had not gone to the police. My silence was her victory, and it emboldened her. The physical threat was gone. She didn't need it anymore. It was replaced by a cold, surgical contempt. "You should really try to wipe that sour look off your face, Nora," she'd say brightly at the dinner table, in front of my father. "You just look so heavy all the time. It's very unattractive. No wonder you don't have any friends." My father would just shift in his seat, his eyes on his plate. "I was just talking to Mark," she continued, spearing a piece of broccoli. "I just don't think you're cut out for the real world. You can't handle a little bit of stress. If you fall apart just from working a busy retail shift, what are you going to do with your actual life? It's embarrassing." The final straw wasn't loud. It was quiet. It came on a dead calm Tuesday afternoon, almost 2 weeks after the slap. The store was empty. She called me into the cash office. I stood in the doorway, my stomach churning. She didn't look up from her paperwork. "Nora, your attitude has been unacceptable," she said, her voice bored. "You're dragging down the whole front end. I'm cutting your hours." "What?" I whispered. "Starting next week. I can only guarantee you maybe 4 or 5 hours, tops, if that. She finally looked up, her eyes devoid of all emotion. If you can't be a team player, you don't get team player hours. Maybe you should use the free time to think about your attitude. It was the checkmate. It wasn't just an insult. It was the final, brilliant, cruel move. She wasn't just firing me, which might look suspicious. She was starving me out. She was taking away the one thing I needed to save, the one thing I needed to escape, my paycheck, my tiny, pathetic lifeline. I just stood there and looked at her. And in that moment, the fear that had been my constant companion for a year just evaporated. It was gone, and there was nothing left underneath, just a vast, cold, empty space. I didn't say a word. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just turned around. I walked out of the office. I walked over to my assigned register, lane 4, where the lane closed light was on. I grabbed a single piece of receipt paper from the printer. I turned it over to the blank side. I clicked my pen. On the back, I wrote 2 lines. I quit. Today is my last day. I walked to the main store manager's office, a small, glassed-in box near the entrance. Dave, the manager, a man whose spine seemed to be made of lukewarm gelatin, was on the phone, laughing about some golf game. He saw me, waved me in. I put the slip of receipt paper on his desk, right on top of his keyboard. He stopped laughing. He looked at the paper, his eyes widening. He put his hand over the receiver. "Nora, wait," he stammered, his face immediately flushing. Let's not be hasty. What's this about? I'm sure we can smooth this over. Let's just all sit down and talk." "I'm sure you can't," I said. My voice was as empty as I felt. He sighed, a long, weary sound of a man who hated conflict more than anything. "Well, if you ever change your mind, you're always welcome back, Nora, always." "I won't," I said. I walked out of his office. I walked past the checkout lanes, past Lena, who watched me go, her mouth open. I walked out the automatic doors. The whoosh of them sliding shut behind me was the most final, most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I didn't go home. I got in my car, drove to the next town over, a bigger, grittier town with an industrial park. I pulled into the service bay of a massive Ford dealership. I walked into the service department. It smelled like gasoline, motor oil, and burnt coffee. I walked up to the man behind the counter. "Are you hiring?" I asked. He looked at my faded Brightline polo, my name tag still pinned on. "Can you answer a phone?" "Yes," I said. "Can you handle angry customers yelling about their transmissions?" "Yes," I said. "You start tomorrow, 8 a.m. I never wrote Brightline Grocers Pine Ridge on an application or a resume ever again. As far as the world was concerned, I had spent that year caring for a sick relative and doing odd jobs. It was a black hole. A year I had successfully, painfully, excised from my life. I buried it, and I buried the girl who had been slapped in the stockroom along with it. 4 years is a long time. I answered phones. I scheduled oil changes. I learned to like the smell of motor oil. It was the smell of my freedom. I re-enrolled in online classes, this time at a community college in Denver. I saved every single dollar that Valerie had not been able to steal. I lived in a terrible apartment with 2 roommates. I worked. Then I transferred to a 4-year university. I finished my degree, not in psychology, but in user experience design. I found that I loved the logic of it, the empathy of it. I loved building systems that were clear, intuitive, and designed to help people. Systems that didn't gaslight or trick the user. I got an internship at a small tech firm in downtown Denver. Then, 6 months ago, I got a job, a real job, junior UX designer. I had my own cubicle, a new laptop, and a salary. I had an apartment, by myself, on the 14th floor, with a view of the city lights. My contact with my father had dwindled to stilted, obligatory phone calls, maybe twice a month. "How's work?" "Busy." "How's the weather?" "Cold." He never mentioned her name. I never asked. Valerie's contact was limited to occasional, guilt-laced text messages, usually around holidays or birthdays. "I suppose you're too important for your father's birthday now that you're in the big city." Or, "Mark is having some trouble with his blood pressure, but I'm sure you're too busy with your new life to care." I would read them. My stomach would tighten, the old familiar knot of ice, and then I would delete them, one by one, without replying. It was a Thursday night, just after 11:30 p.m. I was at my new office, in my new, quiet, professional building. I was the only one on my floor, just the hum of the servers and the clicking of my keyboard. I was finishing up a series of wireframes for a new client's mobile app, headphones on, lost in the satisfying, logical flow of the work. My phone, resting on the desk beside my mouse, chimed. It was not my normal notification sound. It was a specific, tinny, archaic little ding that I had not heard in 4 years. I froze. My blood went cold. I knew that sound. It was the notification tone I had set up for my ancient, defunct Brightline employee email account, the one tied to their ancient payroll system. An account I hadn't opened, hadn't even thought about, since the day I'd put that receipt paper on Dave's desk. It should have been deactivated, deleted, lost to the ether. Why was it making a sound? My hand was shaking. I picked up the phone. My personal email app, which I'd linked as a recovery address ages ago, was showing a new message. It was a forwarded chain. My heart started a slow, heavy, painful drumbeat against my ribs. There were 2 new messages. The first, the one on top, was from a name I did not recognize, Mara Larkin. The email address was @https google.com/search QA Northwind Retail. Northwind Retail Group, the massive, faceless parent corporation that owned Brightline Grocers. The subject line was 6 words that stopped my breath. Subject: confidential. Inquiry regarding employment at Brightline Pine Ridge. I clicked it. The text was short. It was corporate, cold, and sterile. Dear Ms. Caldwell, we are conducting an urgent internal review regarding your past employment at Brightline Store 312. We have received video footage and an accompanying internal report detailing a serious incident of workplace misconduct involving you and a former supervisor. Please contact this office at your earliest possible convenience to discuss this matter. Video footage. My heart was not a bird anymore. It was a hammer. I scrolled down, my thumb numb and clumsy. Below it was the original, forwarded message, the one that had been sent to Mara Larkin, the one that had triggered this. The timestamp was horrifying. Sent, 2:14 a.m. It was from a garbled, anonymous, encrypted email address. The subject line was 6 words that made the entire 14th floor seem to tilt. Subject: you need to see this before you get sued. There was no text in the body of the email, just attachments, 4 of them, video files. Their names were not words, they were codes. Cam 04B Stock Corridor, followed by the date from 4 years ago, the date of the slap. Cam 07A Receiving Bay, followed by the date from the week before, the day by the bailer. I stared at the file names. I stared at the 2:14 a.m. timestamp. Someone in that store, Lena, Miguel, someone I didn't even know, someone had seen, someone had remembered, or the system had, the new, cloud-based system she had been so proud of. I dropped the phone on the desk. It clattered against my keyboard. I had been wrong. I had been so wrong. That night, lying in my bed, defeated, I had believed her. I had believed that no one was watching. I had believed that no one cared. I had believed that the camera was blind, that it was only there for the money. It had been watching, and it had never, ever blinked. I am back in the beige room, the hum of the fluorescent light drilling into my skull. Mara Larkin and Eli Torres are watching me. Their expressions a careful, practiced blend of concern and corporate analysis. They have just seen the ghost of my 19-year-old self, slapped and brutalized in grainy black and white. The girl in that video was a victim. I am not her anymore. I take a breath, letting the muscle memory of the UX designer I am now take over, the designer who organizes chaos into clean, logical flows. I will cooperate, I say. My voice is level, colder than I expected. I will give you the full context, but what you just showed me was 4 years ago. My evidence is not here. It's at my apartment, in storage. Eli leans forward, intrigued. Evidence? What sort of evidence? Notes, I say. Schedules, records, the things a 19-year-old kid thinks to keep when she's too scared to speak up. You have your video, I have my documentation. Mara Larkin's eyes narrow slightly. I can see the calculus shifting behind her gaze. I am no longer just the crying girl in the footage. I am the woman who used the word documentation. She is realizing this is not an emotional problem, but a data problem, and data problems are liabilities. I will need some time to gather it, I continue. How much time? Mara asks, her tone sharp. 1 week, I say. She nods, a quick, decisive movement. 1 week, we will reconvene at a neutral site, a conference room at our corporate offices near Pine Ridge. Given the nature of this, we will be ensuring all involved parties are present for the formal review. All involved parties, the words hang in the air. She means Valerie. She is setting up a confrontation, and I realize, with a cold jolt, she isn't just investigating me, she's building her own case, and I am her star witness. I get home to my Denver apartment, the one on the 14th floor, the one that is my sanctuary from that life, and for the first time, I voluntarily unlock the past. In the back of my closet is a single cardboard box, taped shut, marked Pine Ridge. I haven't opened it since I moved. I pull it out, slice the tape, and the smell of dust and old paper hits me. Old textbooks, my community college ID, and there, at the very bottom, is the notebook. It's a cheap, spiral-bound notepad from the Brightline office supplies aisle. The cover bent and creased. I open it. Lena's advice, write everything down. My handwriting is shaky, the ink a faded blue. The entries are sporadic, desperate. August 10th. Valerie made me stay 30 minutes after my shift to clean the break room. Off the clock. Said it was for family. September 2nd. Wrist bruised. She grabbed me by the baler, yelled at me for talking to Lena. October 19th. She tore up my shift request, said I never gave it to her. November 29th, the day after Black Friday. Stayed 3 hours late cleaning the promo aisle, not paid. And then, the entry for the night of the video. It's just one line, scrawled so hard it nearly tore the paper. November 30th. She hit me. I close the notebook. This is the analog data. Now for the digital. I sit at my desk, my sanctuary, and I open my laptop. First, the photo. I go into my personal cloud storage, deep into a folder I encrypted and hid, marked Taxes Old. Inside is one file, the selfie from the bathroom mirror. The date stamp is December 1st, at 2:17 a.m., less than 4 hours after the slap. I open it. The girl in the photo stares back at me, her eye swollen, the purple and red handprint a sickening, vivid map on her jaw. It's the face of the girl in the video. I save the file to my desktop. Next, the payroll portal. I type in the web address for the Northwind Retail Employee Services, an ancient, clunky interface I haven't seen in 4 years. I try my old employee number and the password I used for everything back then. Access granted. My heart stops. It's still active. They never deactivated my account. I navigate to the payroll archives. It's all there, every pay stub, every schedule. I open my notebook. I open the payroll records, and I begin to cross-reference. The girl I am now, the woman who analyzes data patterns for a living, takes over. It's not an emotional memory anymore. It's a data set. Notebook, week of November 28th. Worked 48 hours, Black Friday week. Official pay stub, week of November 28th. Paid hours, 4,000. 8 hours, gone. Notebook, Week of October 12th. Came in early, 10 a.m., for shipment, per V. Official schedule. Week of October 12th. Shift, start, 3 o'clock p.m. 5 hours, gone. I go through it, month by month. The discrepancies aren't random. They aren't glitches. They are systematic. It's wage theft. Clean and simple. Documented in their own system and in my own hand. I download every single PDF. Then, I plug in my old phone, the one I kept in the box. It whirs to life, a digital ghost. I open the text messages, the chain from Valerie. It's all there. A running commentary of her abuse. October 3rd. The household contribution is due today. Don't make me ask for it. October 19th. I saw you laughing with Lena. I'm cutting your hours for next week. You need to learn to be more professional. November 15th. You are an ungrateful child. I am the only reason you have a job at all. And you should remember that every time you clock in. I screenshot every single message. I do not cry. I become cold. I become methodical. I open a new document on my laptop. Not a word processor, but a spreadsheet. I create a timeline. Column A, date. Column B, incident type, wage theft, verbal abuse, gaslighting, physical assault. Column C, Valerie's action. Column D, my record, notebook entry. Column E, digital proof, pay stub discrepancy, text screenshot, video timestamp. I am no longer a victim remembering her trauma. I am a data analyst building a case. Now for the last piece, the anonymous sender, Lena. I go to social media. I type Lena Ortiz Pine Ridge. She's still there. Her profile picture now a grainy selfie with a smiling toddler, presumably her grandchild. I send a message. My fingers are steady. Hi, Lena. It's Nora Caldwell. I used to work with you at Brightline. I don't know if you remember me. My phone buzzes with a reply in less than 1 minute. Mia, I remember you every day. I've been waiting for you to call. Can you meet? We meet at a coffee shop halfway between Denver and Pine Ridge. She looks older, grayer, but her eyes are the same, sharp, sad, and angry. She hugs me, her arms surprisingly strong. It was you, wasn't it? I say, not as a question. The email, at 2:14 a.m. She nods, stirring her coffee. Yes, it was me. Why, Lena, why now, after 4 years? Her face hardens. Because after you left, she got worse. She didn't have you to kick around anymore. So she found a new target, a little girl, barely 16, hired her as a summer bagger. My stomach clenches. Valerie got into it with the kid, right up by the registers. Lena continues, her voice low and furious, about a returned item, and she grabbed the girl's arm, hard, left bruises, but this time, the girl's mother was standing right there, and she made a scene, a big one, yelled about assault, threatened to call the cops. My God, I whisper. Corporate got involved fast, Lena says. They suspended Valerie. They started pulling tapes to investigate the new girl's claim. And you know that new cloud system they installed? The one Valerie was so proud of? My heart is pounding. It keeps footage, I say. It keeps everything, Lena says with a grim smile. They don't delete. It's cloud storage. They pulled the footage of the new girl, and then some auditor, must have typed Valerie Caldwell and assault into a search bar. And up popped you. Up popped the slap in the stockroom. Up popped the Baylor incident. They had a pattern. So they fired her? They transferred her, Lena spat, to another store, a demotion, and they transferred me to the Littleton branch. They called it a fresh start. I called it a cover-up. They were just burying it, burying you. I knew they had the tapes. I knew they were just sitting there. So I used my old login. From home, I found the files, and I sent them. Not just to HR. I sent them to the regional vice president and to the legal department. I made sure the right people saw it. She reaches into her purse and pulls out a folded piece of paper. They're going to come after her now, and they're going to try to silence you. This is my formal statement. I had it notarized this morning. It says what I saw. It says what she did. It's yours. I take the paper, my hand shaking. Thank you, Lena. Don't thank me, she says. Go get her. This is no longer an HR meeting. This is a legal case. The next day, I am not at my UX job. I am in the office of a man named Jordan Pike, a local labor lawyer. He is young, sharp, and his office is not fancy, which tells me he's hungry. I don't give him the emotional backstory. I don't talk about my father or the notebook. I just open my laptop. I put it on his desk. I open the spreadsheet. This is a timeline of events, I say. Then I open the folder with the screenshots, the pay stubs, and Lena's statement. Finally, I open the video file of the slap. I press play. Jordan Pike watches the silent, grainy black and white footage, his face impassive. He watches Valerie's hand crack across my 19-year-old face. He watches the cans fall. He hits pause. He leans back in his chair and steeples his fingers. He is quiet for a long time. Ms. Caldwell, he says finally. Nora, what Northwind Retail Group has called you in for is not an interview. It's a damage control meeting. They are absolutely terrified. He stands up and starts to pace. This is not just a Me Too case. This is systematic, documented wage theft over a period of months. This is forgery. If we can prove that schedule change, this is retaliation. And this, he taps the laptop screen. This is criminal assault and battery, caught on their own high-definition cameras, with a witness and an anonymous email that proves they were notified of a pattern before they even called you. They are not trying to get your story. They are trying to find out what your price is to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So what do? I ask, my voice trembling. You are going to that meeting, he says, a sharp, predatory smile cutting across his face. You are going to stay perfectly calm. You are not going to cry. You are not going to yell. You will not, under any circumstances, ask for money. That is my job. He leans on his desk. You are going to play the part of the good employee who was failed by their system. You will present your evidence, not as a threat, but as context they requested, and you will frame your entire purpose for being there as one thing, and one thing only: accountability. You will say, I am here to make sure what happened to me never happens to another 16-year-old girl in one of your stores. You make them want to offer you a settlement, he continues. You make them believe it's their idea, that it's the only way to prove they're doing the right thing. Let them see you as a righteous advocate, not a greedy victim. I leave his office. I go to an office supply store. I buy a heavy, 2-inch, black vinyl binder. I buy plastic sheet protectors. I go home to my apartment, and I print everything. I slide the master timeline into the first sleeve. Click. I slide the highlighted pay stub discrepancies, showing the stolen hours, into the next. Click. I print a high-quality 8x10 color photo of the bruised selfie. The girl in the photo, with her haunted eyes and purpled jaw, stares back at me. I slide her into her own sleeve. Click. I print the screenshots of Valerie's texts, the threats, the demands for money. Click. I slide the notarized, signed statement from Lena Ortiz into the inside pocket. I close the binder. It makes a heavy, solid, satisfying thud. I look at the black binder, sitting on my clean, modern desk. 4 years ago, I was a terrified girl with a secret notebook hidden under her mattress, wishing the smoke detector was a camera. Today, I am a 24-year-old woman with a legal team, and I am holding the entire case file. I am not just surviving Valerie anymore. I am coming to the meeting fully, completely prepared. The neutral site conference room is in a glass and steel office park 10 miles outside of Pine Ridge. It's a box designed to have no personality, no memory. It smells of new carpet and faint, chemical lemon polish. The table is a long, dark, reflective slab of wood. A 60-inch television screen is mounted on the far wall. I am the first one here. I sit at the middle of the table, placing my heavy black binder squarely on the wood in front of me. I am wearing the best blazer I own. My hands are folded on top of the binder. I am early. I am prepared. Mara Larkin and Eli Torres enter next. They nod at me, their faces grim and professional. They take seats opposite me. They are followed by a man I recognize. Dave, the store manager from Pine Ridge, the one with the gelatin spine. He looks pale, his eyes darting between me and Mara. He sits as far down the table as possible. The last man to enter with them is a stranger. He's in his late 40s, sharp, with an IT consultant vibe. He carries a laptop. "This is Mr. Jensen," Mara says. "He's with our internal asset protection and data security team." Jensen nods at me once, sits down, and immediately opens his laptop, plugging it into the table's console. He is here for the data. I am too. The door opens one last time. Valerie walks in. She is not wearing a Brightline polo or a supervisor's vest. She is wearing a crisp, beige blazer, a silk shell, and tailored trousers. Her hair is perfect. She looks like a regional manager, like a woman of authority. She is projecting power, untouchability. Her eyes scan the room, and her professional smile falters for a half-second when she sees me, but she recovers instantly. She turns that bright, false beam on me, the one she used to use for Eli. "Nora, honey," she begins, her voice full of a syrupy, maternal concern, as if this is all just a terrible misunderstanding. "I'm so glad we're finally clearing this up. This is a formal investigation. Valerie," Mara Larkin's voice is like a blade, cutting straight through the performance. "This is not a family discussion. Please take a seat." Valerie's smile tightens. The mask is fixed, but the eyes are cold. She sits down, 2 chairs away from Eli, directly across from me. She will not look at me. She looks at Mara. "Then let's proceed," Valerie says, her voice now clipped and professional. "I'm sure we all have stores to get back to." "We do," Mara says. "Mr. Jensen, if you would." Jensen types a command. The 60-inch screen on the wall flickers to life. The overhead lights dim. It is not the small, grainy laptop video from the first meeting. This is the source file. High definition, clear. The timestamp is sharp and white in the corner. The entire room is forced to watch, in cinematic detail, as Valerie Caldwell, in her blue supervisor vest, corners her 19-year-old stepdaughter in a concrete hallway. We watch her jab her finger into my chest. We watch her shove me, hard, into the metal shelving. I see Dave, the store manager, flinch, a tiny, guilty movement. I see Eli Torres's jaw tighten, his hands clenching into fists on the table. We watch her scream, her face a silent, contorted mask of rage. And then we watch the slap. It is brutal. It is not a tap. It is a full-force, open-handed assault. My head snaps back, the sound so loud, even without audio, that it seems to suck the air from the room. We watch my head hit the metal bar. We watch the cans of soup rain down. The video plays for a full 10 seconds after, showing me cowering, my hand to my face, and Valerie standing over me, heaving. Jensen hits the spacebar. The image freezes. A high-definition portrait of my humiliation. The lights come up. The silence in the room is heavy, suffocating. "Valerie," Mara says, her voice dangerously calm, "would you like to provide context for what we just witnessed?" Valerie is pale, but she is composed. She has rehearsed this. "Of course," she says, her voice smooth. As you can see, Nora was in an agitated state. She was hysterical. She had been making accusations, and she knocked over the display. I was trying to restrain her, to calm her down. I was concerned she was going to hurt herself. It was a chaotic moment. The video is unfortunate. It's cut completely out of context. "Restrain her." Jordan Pike's voice is in my head. That's the legal lie. Don't engage. Just provide the data. Mara looks at me. "Nora?" I do not look at Valerie. I look at Mara, at Eli, at Jensen. I am a professional in a meeting. The context, I say, and my voice is steady, is that I was at the end of a 10-hour shift, a shift that followed a week of working nearly 50 hours. The context is that just before this, Ms. Caldwell had publicly humiliated me in front of a line of customers for a register malfunction I couldn't control. The context is that she had ordered me to stay after I had already clocked out, to perform several hours of unpaid labor organizing the stockroom. That's a lie, Valerie snaps. I ignore her. I place my hand on the black binder. You asked me to provide documentation for this meeting. I open the cover. The click of the 3 rings opening is the loudest sound in the room. I slide the first plastic sleeve out and push it into the center of the table. This is a timeline of events, correlating my personal logs with your company's payroll data. I slide out the next. These are the pay stub discrepancies. My notebook, which you can see here, lists 48 hours worked during Black Friday week. My official pay stub, from your system, lists 40 hours, 8 hours of unpaid labor. I slide out the next stack. Here are the text messages, sent to my personal phone, where Ms. Caldwell threatens to cut my hours if I do not comply with her demands for money from my paycheck for household contributions. Here is the threat where she calls me unprofessional for speaking to Lena Ortiz. Valerie's face is white. This is family business. This has nothing to do with Brightline. It has everything to do with Brightline, I say, my voice still calm. This is a supervisor using her corporate given power to threaten and extort a subordinate employee, an employee who was also 19 years old. And then I slide out the last, single page, the 8x10, full-color photograph. I push it across the table so it stops directly in front of Mara Larkin. It is the selfie from the bathroom, the swollen eye, the purple and green handprint on my jaw. Eli Torres lets out a breath, a low, guttural sound of disgust. Dave, the store manager, looks at the photo and physically recoils, pushing his chair back. The context for that video, I say, tapping the photo, is this was taken at 2:17 a.m. on December 1st, approximately 4 hours after I was restrained. Does this look like the result of a supervisor trying to calm an employee? Mara Larkin's face has gone from professional to arctic. She picks up the photo, her eyes drilling into it. She looks at the video, still frozen on the screen. She looks back at the photo. The time codes match, she says, almost to herself. She looks up, her eyes finally landing on Valerie, and for the first time, Valerie looks scared. And Mara continues, this photo corroborates the anonymous reports we've received from other employees about your management style. Mr. Jensen, Mara says, not taking her eyes off Valerie. Yes, Jensen says, typing on his laptop. The image on the screen changes from the video to a spreadsheet. It's a time log. Ms. Caldwell, Valerie. Our internal systems show a pattern of manual overrides on Nora's employee time card. Specifically, on the dates Nora has listed in her log as working off the clock. We show a manual entry from your supervisor login, adjusting the clock-out time, often rounding it down. He points to a line item. On November 30th, the night of this incident, Nora clocked out at 10:03 p.m. Your logs show you manually adjusted her file at 11:49 p.m., after she had left, to add a disciplinary note for creating a disturbance in the stockroom. There is no mention of you striking her, only of her being hysterical. Can you explain that? Valerie is cornered. The video, the photo, the pay stubs, the texts, and now her own digital footprint, the professional. Beige blazer is no longer armor, it is a costume. The mask shatters. She turns in her chair, her entire body rigid, and points her finger at me, the same finger from the video. You, she shrieks, her voice climbing, all pretense of calm gone. You did this, you ungrateful little brat. I gave you a job. I took you into my home. I fed you. I taught you what the real world was like, and this is how you repay me? By dragging this family through the mud? By trying to ruin me? Mara says. Valerie, I'd advise you to. I was handling her, Valerie screams, her face a blotchy, furious red. She was disrespectful. She was lazy. She was accusing me, her own mother, of stealing. So I pushed her. I grabbed her arm. So what? It's not like anybody died. The room is shocked into absolute silence. She has just admitted to it. It's not like anybody died. The implicit confession. Mara Larkin leans back. She slowly closes the file folder that had been in front of her. She looks at Eli. She looks at Jensen. She looks at me. Thank you, Valerie, Mara says, her voice as cold and quiet as a morgue. That is all we needed to hear. Valerie is still breathing hard, realizing what she just said. Mara continues, her voice like a judge reading a verdict. What we have here, Ms. Caldwell, is a pattern of wage theft, documented by our own systems, a pattern of retaliation and harassment, documented by text messages, and a clear-cut, zero-tolerance violation of our workplace violence policy, documented on video, corroborated by a witness statement from Lena Ortiz, and now, finally, admitted by you. She shakes her head. Assaulting an employee, any employee, is grounds for immediate termination. Assaulting a 19-year-old subordinate, a minor in spirit, and then systematically covering it up for 4 years? That's not just a corporate liability, that's a moral failure. Valerie just stares, her mouth open, speechless for the first time. Mara turns her gaze to me. It is not kind. It is analytical. Nora, given the severity of these findings and the extreme nature of your experience, the company is prepared to discuss a resolution. What outcome are you looking for? This is the moment. Jordan Pike's voice is in my ear. Righteous, not greedy. I take a breath. I want 3 things. The corporate team tenses. They are expecting a number, a massive lawsuit. First, I say, I want a guarantee, in writing, that Valerie Caldwell is never, under any circumstances, put in a supervisory position over a minor or any employee under the age of 21 at any Northwind Retail Group property ever again. Eli Torres blinks, surprised. Second, I continue, I want a full, independent audit of my time cards. I want every single hour of unpaid labor, every rounded-down minute, calculated, and I want those stolen wages paid back to me, in full, with interest. And third, I say, looking Mara dead in the eye, I want a formal, written apology from the Northwind Retail Group, an admission that your system and your managers failed to protect me, and I want to know what new training you are implementing, today, to ensure that no other 19-year-old kid ever gets restrained by their supervisor in a stockroom again. The relief in the room from the corporate side is palpable. This is not a lawsuit. This is a fixable, manageable, public relations-friendly list of demands. Mara Larkin nods, almost imperceptibly. Those are acceptable terms. We will, of course, be proceeding with Ms. Caldwell's immediate suspension, without pay, pending her termination. Termination? Valerie whispers, as if the word is in a foreign language. That's correct, Mara says, standing up. Mr. Jensen will escort you from the building. You are not to return to the Pine Ridge store. You will receive a formal package from our legal team. Valerie is stunned. She stands up, her legs wobbly. She looks at me, her face a collapsed mask of disbelief and pure, unadulterated hatred. Jensen, the data guy, now stands. He is no longer an IT consultant. He is security. He gestures to the door. Valerie gathers her purse. As she walks past me, she leans in, her voice a low, vicious hiss that only I can hear. You did this, she snarls. You destroyed this family. You are a poisonous, backstabbing little liar. You will regret this for the rest of your life. She doesn't wait for Jensen. She shoves the door open and storms out of the conference room. The tension drains from the room, leaving a sick, hollow feeling. Mara Larkin turns back to me. Her professional face is back on. Thank you for your cooperation. Nora, this has been illuminating. Our legal team will be in touch with your lawyer. I see from my notes his name is Jordan Pike, to finalize the details of this agreement and the repayment. I just nod. I close my black binder. Click. I stand up. I have won. I don't feel victorious. I just feel empty and very, very tired. I drove back to Denver in a daze, the black binder heavy on the passenger seat. The adrenaline from the meeting was gone, leaving behind a hollow, vibrating exhaustion. I didn't feel like I had won. I felt like I had just survived a second, much cleaner amputation. The first time, I had ripped myself away from Pine Ridge. This time, I had methodically, clinically, cut the diseased part out, but I had to show them all the rot to do it. I got to my apartment, ordered a pizza I had no intention of eating, and sat on my sofa, staring at the city lights. I was safe. It was over. And then, at 8:03 p.m., my phone began to ring. I looked at the screen. Dad. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it rang again. Dad. And again. And again. He called 6 times, back to back. A frantic, desperate pounding on my digital door. On the 7th call, I pressed the green icon. I held the phone to my ear, but I didn't say anything. Nora, thank God, Nora, you have to stop this. His voice was a raw, panicked sob. It was the voice of a man I had never heard before, not even when my mother was sick. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated fear. What did you do? Nora, he choked out. What did you do? They suspended her. They're talking about charges. They're saying she could be, oh God, Nora, this is our life. You're ruining our life. Hello, Mark, I said. My voice was ice. Don't you hello Mark me, he stammered, the fear turning to a weak, sputtering anger. This is your family. This is Valerie. She was just angry. Nora, it was a moment. People get angry. You don't do this. You don't ruin someone. You have to call them back. You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you were upset. Tell them you forgive her. I'm not doing that, I said. Nora, please, he begged, his voice breaking again. She's in our room. She hasn't stopped crying. She's the reason we have this house. Nora, she's the reason we have food. You can't just take that away. This is me. This is your father. I am begging you. The man on the phone was a stranger, a weak, terrified stranger who was begging me to protect his abuser. I will meet you, I said, my voice flat and dead. I will not come to Pine Ridge. I will not come to that house. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., the Skillet Diner off I-70 in Denver. You can come and say what you have to say, and then this conversation is over. I hung up before he could answer. The next morning, I was there at 9:45. I took a booth in the back, the one with a clear view of the door. I ordered a black coffee. I sat, and I waited. He walked in at 10:05, looking like a ghost. He was wearing his warehouse work pants and a faded flannel shirt, and he looked like he hadn't slept in a year. He looked 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. His shoulders were slumped, not just with fatigue, but with a crushing, permanent defeat. His hands, the ones I remembered as strong and capable, were stained with grease and were visibly trembling. He looked lost, pathetic, and unbearably weak. He slid into the booth opposite me, his eyes red-rimmed and darting around, as if he was ashamed to be seen. "You look terrible, Mark," I said. "Nora," he whispered, clasping his trembling hands on the table. "You look good." A waitress came over. He just waved her away. "You have to fix this," he said, his voice a low, desperate plea. She was just stressed. Nora, you don't know the pressure she was under. The mortgage, my hours, Blake's tuition. She was holding it all together, and you weren't easy either. You were moping. You had an attitude. I just stared at him. He was parroting her. After everything. After the meeting. After the video. He was still reading her script. She was just trying to teach you, he pleaded, his eyes welling up. To teach you what the real world is. She was trying to make you tough. She hit me, Dad. I said it quietly, but the words landed on the table between us like a rock. It was one time, he said, his voice rising, defensive. One time, and you provoked her. You said, she told me what you said. You called her a thief. She was a thief, I said, my voice still level. She was stealing my wages. She was making me work off the clock. She was extorting half my paycheck to pay for her new patio furniture, all while telling you we were broke. She was building a case to fire me, with forged write-ups, so I couldn't claim unemployment. And then she assaulted me in the stockroom, a 19-year-old employee, her stepdaughter, the person she was supposed to protect. I didn't know all that, he stammered, looking down at his hands. She has a temper. I've seen it. But this, Nora, this is too much. It's family. You're supposed to handle this in the family. You don't go to corporate. You don't bring in lawyers. Where were you? Dad? I asked. My voice was still quiet. Where were you when I was working 7 closing shifts in a row and failing my classes? Where were you when she was humiliating me at the dinner table? Where were you when she grabbed my wrist by the bailer and left a bruise for a week? And where were you on the night she slapped me? The night I came home, and you were asleep in your recliner, and I went to bed with a handprint on my face? He flinched, the words hitting him. I was tired. Nora, I was working. I thought she was just being a mom. She was not being a mom, I said, the ice in my voice starting to crack, a cold, sharp anger underneath. She was being a tyrant, and you were a coward. You were so terrified of being alone, so grateful that she was paying the bills, that you let her do it. You let her feed on me. You saw it, and you looked away. That's not fair, he said, his voice rising. I'm your father. A father would have protected me, I said, my own voice finally rising, sharp and clear. A father would have believed me. A father would not be sitting here, right now, begging me to protect the woman who assaulted me. He recoiled, as if I had slapped him. The diner suddenly felt very quiet. I drew a line. Dad, I said, lowering my voice again, the coldness returning. I am done. The company is handling it. They are paying me back my stolen wages, and they are ensuring she never manages a young employee again. But the charges, she could, they said criminal, Nora, she could go to jail. What she did was a crime, I said. And that's not even all of it, I leaned forward. My lawyer, the one you're so angry about, isn't just looking at the assault. He's looking at the wage theft, and he's considering filing a formal complaint with the State Labor Board, a full-scale audit of the Pine Ridge store's payroll practices. The color drained from his face. This was new information. This was something beyond the family, beyond the company. This was the government. An audit? He whispered. A full audit of all her records, all her manual overrides, all her glitches in the system. He began to shake. His face was a mask of pure primal panic. He wasn't just afraid for Valerie anymore. He was afraid for himself, the house, the car, the entire fragile financial structure built on her salary and her management. It was all about to be investigated. No, he whispered. No, you can't, Nora. You can't. She what? He looked up at me, his eyes swimming with a desperate, terrified guilt. He was broken. And in that moment, he finally confessed. She, after you left, he stammered, the words tumbling out. She was still using your number. I froze. My what? Your employee number, your ID, in the system. His voice was barely a whisper. She was having trouble with the labor costs, with the hours for the part-timers, the minors, the high school kids. They're only allowed to work so many hours a week, by law. And Valerie, she was making them work more, off the books, just like she did with you. My blood went cold. She needed to cook the books, he choked out, the tears now rolling freely down his weathered face. To make the hours look right. So she kept your employee file active. She'd put their extra hours under your name, a few hours here, a few hours there, just so the computer system would look balanced. I stared at him. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just wage theft from me. It was identity theft. It was fraud. She had been using my name, my social security number, to cover up a new crime, to cover up the exploitation of other children. She was just trying to make the numbers work. Nora, he sobbed. She didn't mean. She's going to be in so much trouble. We're going to be in so much trouble. They'll take the house. My anger, my sadness, my pain, it all evaporated. It was replaced by something hard and cold and sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. I stood up. I pulled my wallet out of my purse. I took out a $20 bill and threw it on the table for the coffee. Mark looked up at me, his face a pathetic, crumpled mess. Nora, where are you going? What are you going to do? I looked down at the man who was my father, the man who had sold me out for a quiet life and a paid mortgage, the man who had just admitted to being an accomplice to fraud. You have one chance, Mark, I said. My voice was completely, utterly empty. You have one single chance to do the right thing, not for me, not for her, but for yourself, before my lawyer finds this out from the state audit. What chance? You are going to go home. You are going to find every piece of paper, every schedule she brought home, every note, every file she has on those kids. Any proof you have that she was using my employee number after I quit, you are going to put it all in a box, and you are going to give it to my lawyer. Nora, I can't. She's my wife. And then, I continued, as if he hadn't spoken, you are going to stop. You are going to stop calling me. You are going to stop begging me to protect her. And you are going to stop, for once in your miserable goddamn life, asking me to light myself on fire to keep you warm. I picked up my purse. That's your one chance, Dad. Do the right thing, or get destroyed with her. It's your choice. I turned, and I walked out of the diner. I did not look back. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of a deep, ringing silence from Pine Ridge. 3 weeks where I went to my real job in Denver and lost myself in the clean, binary logic of wireframes and user flows. The call came from Jordan Pike on a Tuesday afternoon. I stepped into a quiet stairwell at my office, my heart a slow, heavy drum. Nora, he said, and his voice was crisp, professional, and devoid of emotion. It was done. It's signed. They've concluded the investigation. And? I asked, my voice quiet. And, he said, and I could hear the faint smile in his voice. Valerie Caldwell has been terminated for gross misconduct and violation of multiple company policies, including the Workplace Violence Code. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 6 years. Terminated, not transferred, not demoted, fired. The settlement is finalized, Jordan continued. They've agreed to the full amount. That includes the complete back pay for every hour of unpaid labor we documented, plus damages for the distress, and as requested, the formal letter of apology from the corporate office. It wasn't just the money, it was the terms. They've agreed to roll out a mandatory new training module for all regional and store-level managers, Jordan read from the document. Specifically targeting anti-nepotism, the protection of underage and young adult workers, and anti-retaliation policies. They're calling it the Bright Line Safety Initiative or some corporate garbage, but it's your policy. And my file? I asked, thinking of the forged write-ups. Scrubbed, he said. Completely clean. Your internal record is flagged as eligible for rehire with no disciplinary marks. As far as the company is concerned, you left of your own accord with a perfect record. I leaned my head against the cool concrete of the stairwell. What about the other thing? The fraud. My father's confession. Your father, Jordan said, his voice tightening with a grim satisfaction, did, in fact, contact my office. He FedExed a box. It was a treasure trove. Valerie's handwritten schedules, notes on napkins, all correlating with the payroll of those other high school kids. She was running a massive time card fraud scam using your employee ID. The company, he chuckled, was very grateful to have that information before a state audit. It gave them grounds for an egregious misconduct firing, which voids her severance. They were almost happy to pay you. So my name is cleared? Every fraudulent entry tied to your social security number and employee ID, post-employment, has been expunged from their system. It is, legally, as if it never happened. We were quiet for a moment. Then, the last question. The criminal charges, I said. This is your call, Nora, he said. The company is begging you not to. They've filed their own internal report, but they are hoping you'll let the settlement be the end of it. I thought about it. I thought about her in a courtroom. I thought about my father having to testify. I thought about the small, ugly satisfaction of it, and then the long, drawn-out appeal. No, I said, my voice firm. I won't pursue it personally. On 2 conditions. The company's official report must be filed with the Pine Ridge Police Department, documenting the assault, and the ban is permanent. She is never, ever allowed to hold a supervisory role at any Northwind retail property again. I want that in the settlement agreement. Done, he said. It's already in there. Congratulations. Nora, you won. I hung up. I went back to my desk. I had won. The legal part was a clean cut. The family part was a festering wound. A week later, after the settlement money had been wired, a long, long text message appeared on my phone. A wall of blue from my father. Mark. He had moved out. He was in a motel on the highway. He had started going to counseling, some men's group at the local church. He wrote, in clumsy, heartbreaking sentences, that he was sorry. He wrote the words I had needed to hear for my entire adult life. I failed to protect you. Nora, you were just a kid, working in that store, and I didn't protect you. I see that now. I was a coward. I read that line, over and over, the tears finally coming, hot and sudden. But then I read the last paragraph. He was still talking to her. He was visiting her. He couldn't just abandon her to the wolves. He loved her. He was trying to fix it, to heal them. He was still, after all of it, too weak to cut the cord. He had moved out of the house, but he had not left her. I stared at the message, the tears drying on my face, replaced by a cold, sad finality. He had chosen. He had seen the evidence. He had admitted the truth, and he had still chosen her. I typed back a single reply. I hope you make better choices. Dad, I made mine. Our contact after that became what it should have been all along. Minimal, polite, distant. We exchanged Merry Christmas texts. I sent him a gift card for his birthday. I had no father. I had a relative named Mark. The money in my bank account was a number so large it looked like a typo. I didn't buy a sports car. I didn't buy a new wardrobe. The first thing I did, on a quiet Friday night in my apartment, was log into my student loan portal. I looked at the balance, the number that had haunted my every paycheck for 4 years. I clicked Pay off full amount. I typed in the number. I clicked Submit. A shower of digital confetti filled the screen. Congratulations! Your loan is paid in full. I sat at my kitchen table, and I wept, not for Valerie, not for my father, but for the 19-year-old girl who thought she'd be in debt until she was 50. I had bought her freedom. The second thing I did was break my lease. I moved into a corner apartment in a new building, high up, on the 21st floor. It was all glass, light, and air. It smelled like new paint and possibility. I went to a local art fair, and I bought a huge, vibrant, abstract painting from a local artist. It cost a lot of money. I hung it on my main wall. It was the first thing I saw every morning. It was the first truly beautiful thing I had ever owned that hadn't come from a clearance rack. I went back to my UX job. I was a different person. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. It was my secret, my power. But my work changed. I found myself advocating, quietly but relentlessly, for the end user, for the powerless. In a meeting about a new corporate intranet product, I found myself speaking up. What about the reporting features? I asked. What if the user is afraid of retaliation from their direct manager? We need an anonymous, encrypted channel. We need to build a system that protects the person reporting, not the person being reported on. My boss looked at me, impressed. That's a good point. Nora, a very good point. A few months later, my manager called me into her glass-walled office. She had a huge smile on her face. Nora, she said, we've just landed a massive new client, a national logistics and warehouse corporation. They want to build a comprehensive, bottom-up labor safety and compliance application for their entire workforce. She slid a project brief across the table. They want features for injury reporting, anonymous hazard feedback, and wage and hour compliance. It's the biggest project of the year, and I'm making you the lead UX designer on it. It's yours. Run with it. That night, my team took me out for a small celebration. I came home, buzzed from one glass of champagne, to my beautiful, quiet apartment. The mail was on the counter. In it was a thick cream-colored envelope, embossed with the Northwind Retail Group logo. It was the formal apology. I opened it. It was full of corporate, legal language. Regret the circumstances. Committed to a safe workplace. But I found the line, the one my lawyer had fought for, the one I had demanded. We acknowledge that our system and our management failed to protect you when you needed it most. I read the line, failed to protect you. I opened a drawer in my new, modern desk. I placed the letter inside. It joined the other relics, the little, beat-up spiral notebook, the 8x10 color photo of the bruise, the final, signed settlement agreement. These weren't trophies. They were just artifacts. They were the diagnostic files of a life I had survived, not the life I was building. They were the receipts. I stood by my floor-to-ceiling window, the lights of Denver spread out below me like a carpet of fallen stars. I thought about that dark, concrete hallway in Pine Ridge. I thought about the ringing in my ear, the clatter of the soup cans on the floor. And I thought about that little black camera dome on the ceiling, the one she had laughed at, the one she said, no one cares about, the one she told me was only there to catch thieves. She was right. It was there to catch a thief. I finally understood. The real revenge wasn't the satisfaction of her termination. It wasn't the look on her face in that conference room. The real revenge was this, the view from the 21st floor, the student loan balance at zero, the new job title. The real revenge was that I had taken back my own story. I had reclaimed my labor. I had reclaimed my future, and I had proven, to myself and to the world, that even in the most toxic, powerless, minimum-wage job, the girl who is easiest to overlook, the girl who is told she is nothing, can be the one to turn the evidence of her own pain into the power that sets her free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help more people hear this.